when you get someone like a gymnast or others, and they lie on their back on the ground, they push their backside, their bum up against the wall, and then they let their legs fall out, and then they take out a magazine, they start reading the magazine, and they sit there for 30 minutes, 40 minutes. What's going to happen there is they're going to get something called creep.
Yes.
In other words, they start in this position and they will eventually end out here. And that is truly stretching.
Yeah.
Now, why would you want to do that? You want to do that so that you've less, the idea would be that you'd have less resistance to you being able to take your leg, past your head. And I have a pal of mine from Flanagan. He's an incredible guy, also got a degree in exercise science. And Mark was involved in the sport aerobics, or championship aerobics. He was in Australia there for quite some years.
What's his name?
I remember Mark on one occasion. Mark Flanagan.
Okay, because you froze.
Mark Flanagan, Scotland. Yeah, Mark Flanagan from Scotland. Great guy. And then Mark was British and European champion and so on in sport aerobics. But I remember once Mark was going through a routine, and his leg came up and his knee hit his face and he knocked himself out. That was the kind of range of motion that he had. Now, you'd have to ask yourself the question, why did he that kind of range of motion in life? I mean, Mark was a champion in championship aerobics. And so that's fine. That's what sport does. Sport requires that somebody has these excessive ranges of motion, but I can guarantee you there's a price to pay. There's a price to pay for that range of motion. Maybe not when you were 20, but when you get into your 50s and 60s, there will be, and if there isn't, by the way, well, you've won an amazing lottery. It's one of the reasons why I tend not to use the word homeostasis, but I talk about the allostasis and allostatic effect. In other words, that you're constantly changing. Your body is constantly changing and adapting, but there's always a price to pay for every single thing that the body does. So me standing here talking to you, there's a price for me to pay for that. In other words, you don't just get the energy for free. There's a price to pay, and that's part of evolution. So when you're involved in these strenuous workouts to be able to give you the ability to do whatever it is that you wish to do in sport, whether it's rugby or whatever, there's a price to pay, believe you me. And you have to understand that price so that you can then decide whether it's worth it or not. Yes?
Yes, absolutely.
And when you're 20, your idea of what's worth something will be completely different to when you're 40 or when you're 60.